In 1977, a young female cop from a small California coastal town vanished without a trace during her routine night patrol. Everyone assumed she had simply abandoned her duties and run away, until 13 years later, a fisherman spots something shocking at the base of a remote cliff, her rusted patrol car emerging from the waves, with evidence inside that exposed a horrifying truth about that night. The morning fog hung thick over Pacifica, California, that March day in 1990, clinging to the coastal cliffs like a shroud. Sergeant Jack Monroe had just poured his second cup of coffee at home when his radio crackled to life. Unit 23, this is dispatch. We have a 1054 at Devil's Slide. Fisherman reports a possible police vehicle at the base of the cliff. Requesting immediate response. Jack's hand froze mid-reach for his toast. Devil's Slide, the treacherous stretch of Highway 1 where the Pacific Ocean met sheer rock faces. He'd driven that route countless times in his 20 years on the force, but something about this call made his chest tighten. Dispatch, this is Unit 23. Monroe responding. ETA 10 minutes. He grabbed his jacket and headed for his patrol car, the coffee forgotten on the counter. As he pulled out of his driveway, his radio came alive again. "Jack, it's Marie." Detective Marie Estrada's voice was tight with urgency. "I'm already en route. Helicopter's been dispatched. Meet me at the northern observation point." "Copy that. What are we looking at?" "Fisherman says it's definitely one of ours. Old model, heavily damaged. Jack?" She paused. Dispatch ran a preliminary check on missing patrol vehicles from the area. There's only one unaccounted for in the past 20 years. Jack's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. He didn't need her to say the name. Laura, his wife. Missing for 13 years, her patrol car vanished without a trace on a routine night shift in 1977. The drive to Devil's Slide took exactly 9 minutes and 37 seconds. Jack knew because he counted every one of them, his mind racing through memories he'd tried to bury. Laura in her crisp blue uniform, her badge gleaming as she'd kissed him goodbye that last evening. The forced smile when she'd promised to be careful. The empty bed that had waited for her return. The observation point was already crowded with patrol cars when he arrived, their red and blue lights painting the fog in surreal colors. Yellow tape cordoned off the cliff edge where a cluster of officers peered down at the rocky shore below. Jack spotted Marie immediately, her dark hair pulled back in its characteristic bun, her detective shield prominent on her belt. "Jack." She turned as he approached, her brown eyes full of sympathy. "You should prepare yourself. The coroner's been called." He nodded curtly and pushed through to the cliff edge. Below, barely visible through the morning haze, lay the twisted remains of a patrol car. Even from this height, he could see the rust that had eaten through the metal like cancer, the way the roof had caved in from years of pressure and pounding waves. The distinctive whoop-whoop of helicopter rotors announced the arrival of the rescue team. Jack watched as the Coast Guard chopper descended, its crew preparing the heavy cables that would lift the wreck. The fisherman who'd made the discovery stood nearby, a weathered man in his 60s wearing faded overalls and rubber boots. "You found it?" Jack asked. The man nodded, clearly shaken. "Been fishing these waters for 30 years. That car wasn't there last week, I can tell you that. The storm 2 days ago must have dislodged it from wherever it was hiding. When the sun hit that chrome bumper this morning..." He shook his head. "I knew right away it wasn't right." "You did good calling it in," Marie said, joining them. "Can you tell us exactly what you saw?" As the fisherman recounted his discovery, Jack watched the helicopter crew work. They rappelled down the cliff face with practiced efficiency, attaching heavy cables to the vehicle's frame. The process was painstaking. One wrong move could send evidence tumbling into the Pacific. "Lifting now," the radio announced. The gathered officers fell silent as the cables went taut. Slowly, impossibly, the rusted hulk began to rise. Water poured from its broken windows, like tears, and chunks of rust and debris rained down on the rocks below. Jack found himself holding his breath as the car cleared the cliff edge and was guided to a flat area they'd cleared. Up close, the devastation was even worse. The patrol car, a 1975 Plymouth Fury, the same model Laura had driven, was barely recognizable. The ocean had not been kind. Rust had eaten through entire sections of the body, and barnacles crusted the undercarriage like armor. The forensics team moved in immediately, photographing every angle before beginning their examination. Jack forced himself to stand back, to let them work, even as every instinct screamed at him to tear the doors open and search for answers. "License plates still partially readable," one of the techs called out. "Running it now." Marie's hand found Jack's shoulder. "You don't have to be here for this." "Yes, I do." The tech with the laptop looked up, his face grave. "VIN matches. This is Officer Laura Monroe's patrol vehicle." The words hit Jack like a physical blow, even though he'd had felt it in his bones from the moment he'd heard the call. 13 years of not knowing, of wondering if she'd simply left him, left the job, left everything behind. Now here was proof that something terrible had happened that night. Opening the driver's door, the lead forensic tech announced. He pulled, and the door came away entirely, its hinges rusted through. The interior was a cave of shadows and decay, the seats rotted down to springs, the dashboard a mass of corrosion. "No remains visible," the tech reported, and Jack released a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. Whether it was relief or disappointment, he couldn't say. The search continued methodically. Personal effects emerged like artifacts from a tomb, a flashlight, its batteries long since leaked and corroded. A citation book, the pages fused into a solid mass. And then, from beneath the driver's seat, a brass shell casing. "40 caliber, the tech said, holding it up. "Same as department issue." "Blood!" another tech called from the rear of the vehicle. "Degraded, but definitely blood. Under the back seat and—" He popped the trunk, playing his flashlight over the rusted interior. Significant traces in the trunk. A new voice cut through the scene. "What the hell is going on here?" Richard Hensley, the department supervisor, strode through the crime scene tape like he owned it. Which, Jack reflected, he essentially did. Hensley had been Laura's supervisor too, back in '77. Now, in his late 50s, he'd grown thick around the middle, but still carried himself with the authority of a man used to being obeyed. "Richard," Marie said, "we've confirmed it's Laura Monroe's vehicle." Hensley's face went through several expressions before settling on official concern. Christ, after all this time. He looked at Jack. "You shouldn't be here." "I'm fine." "Blood and brass," the forensic lead summarized. "No dash cam recovered, probably destroyed by saltwater. But this is definitely a crime scene." Hensley rubbed his jaw. "Now let's not jump to conclusions. That blood could be anyone's. For all we know, Laura might have—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "She might have been involved in something that went wrong. Shot someone, panicked, ditched the car." "That's not Laura," Jack said flatly. "She wouldn't—" 13 years is a long time, Jack. People aren't always who we think they are." Hensley's tone was sympathetic, but firm. "We investigate this properly. No assumptions." Marie stepped in before Jack could respond. "We'll need DNA testing on the blood samples. It's new technology, expensive, but—" "Do it," Hensley said. "This is a potential homicide. We spare no expense." He looked around the scene. "Media will be all over this. We need a statement." As if summoned by his words, the first news van appeared on the horizon, followed quickly by 2 more. Within minutes, reporters were setting up just beyond the police tape, their cameras focused on the rusted patrol car. Jack found himself in front of the cameras before he'd fully processed what was happening. The reporters thrust microphones at him like weapons. Sergeant Monroe, how does it feel to finally have answers about your wife's disappearance? Is it true Officer Monroe was under investigation before she vanished? Do you believe she was murdered? Jack straightened his shoulders and looked directly into the nearest camera. Officer Laura Monroe was a dedicated member of this department. She'd just been promoted to patrol sergeant when she disappeared in 1977. She was hardworking, honest, and committed to serving this community. We will investigate this discovery thoroughly and professionally, and we will find out what happened to her. Nature has finally surrendered this evidence to us, and we won't waste the opportunity. More questions flew at him, but Marie gently guided him away from the cameras. Behind them, the forensics team continued their methodical work, each piece of evidence carefully catalogued and preserved. "You did good," Marie said as they reached their vehicles. "Go home, Jack. Take some time." Hensley appeared at Jack's elbow. "She's right. You're too close to this. Take a few days. Let us handle the investigation." "I can work this case." "No, you can't." Hensley's tone brooked no argument. "You're emotionally involved. Your judgment's compromised. That's not an insult. It's a fact." Marie nodded reluctantly. "I'll handle it personally. Work with the team. I'll keep you updated every step of the way, Jack. You can trust me." Jack looked between them, then back at the rusted shell of Laura's patrol car. After 13 years, answers were finally within reach. But they were right. He was too close, too raw. "I have copies of the original case files at home," he said finally. "I'll review them, see if there's anything we missed." "That's fine," Hensley said, visibly relieved. "Just don't go playing detective on your own." Marie walked Jack to his patrol car. "I'll head back to the station, pull all the records, the logbooks from 77, duty rosters, everything. We'll figure this out." "Someone killed her, Marie?" The words came out rough. All these years, people saying she ran off, abandoned her duty, but someone killed her. "We don't know that yet." "Blood in the trunk, bullet casing. What else could it be?" Marie's expression was sympathetic but professional. "We follow the evidence. That's all we can do." Jack climbed into his patrol car and started the engine. In his rearview mirror, he could see the forensics team still working, the rusted remains of the past finally dragged into the light. He put the car in gear and headed home, his mind already racing through the dusty files waiting in his office, searching for the clue they'd missed 13 years ago. Jack's house sat quiet in the midday sun, a modest two-story in a Pacifica neighborhood where cops and teachers lived side by side. He pushed through the front door and headed straight for his home office, not bothering to remove his jacket. The box sat on the top shelf of his closet, exactly where he'd placed it 5 years ago during his last review. Brown cardboard, L. Monroe, 1977, written in black marker across the side. He pulled it down and sat on the office floor, spreading the contents around him like pieces of a puzzle he'd never been able to solve. Laura's photograph stared up at him from her personnel file. Blonde hair feathered in the style of the late 70s, blue eyes bright with pride, the new sergeant's stripes fresh on her uniform. She'd been 28 when this was taken, just 2 weeks before she vanished. He grabbed the logbook copies first, running his finger down the entries from November 18, 1977. Laura's handwriting, neat and precise. 2000 hours, beginning patrol, Sector 7. Then 15 minutes later. 2015, routine traffic stop, highway 1 mile marker 42. Warning issued. Nothing after that, no distress call, no report of suspicious activity, no request for backup. Just silence. Jack shuffled through the witness statements, all 3 of them. Her partner that night, Officer Patricia Hendricks, had given a brief account. Last saw Officer Monroe at 2000 hours when she departed for solo patrol. She seemed in good spirits, mentioned wanting to finish early to catch the late movie on TV. The other two statements came from civilians who'd seen a patrol car that night but couldn't confirm it was Laura's. Minimal, frustratingly minimal. He leaned back against the wall, staring at the papers scattered across his carpet. Laura wouldn't have just driven her patrol car off Devil's Slide. The logistics alone made it impossible. How would she have gotten away? Someone else had to be involved. His eyes fell on the duty roster. Patricia Hendricks had been Laura's partner, but there on the bottom of the logbook page was another name, Deputy Carl Bowen, night shift supervisor. He'd signed off on the log entries, confirming their accuracy. Jack grabbed his phone and dialed Marie's cell. She answered on the second ring. "Jack, I'm almost back at the station. Richard's already there. The rest of the team's still processing the scene. I need to ask you about Carl Bowen. He signed the logbook the night Laura disappeared." "Bowen? He transferred to San Mateo County about 8 years ago. What about him?" "I want to talk to him. Can you pull his current contact when you get to the station?" "Sure. You coming in?" "On my way." Jack gathered the files back into their box and stood. The house felt too quiet, too full of ghosts. He needed to move, to do something. Instead of driving directly to the station, he found himself turning onto Highway 1, heading south toward Laura's old patrol sector. 20 minutes later, he pulled over at mile marker 42, the location of her last reported traffic stop. The area hadn't changed much in 13 years. Scrub brush and coastal grasses bent in the eternal wind, the Pacific a gray-blue expanse to the west. To the east, he could see the old industrial docks at Moss Landing, their corrugated metal buildings rusted and weather-beaten. They'd searched there in 77, found nothing. Why had Laura been out here alone? Standard procedure called for pairs after dark, especially in isolated areas. He was about to return to his car when he heard the rumble of another patrol vehicle approaching. The black and white cruiser slowed as it passed, then pulled over. The driver's window rolled down, and Jack found himself looking at a face he hadn't seen in years. "Jack Monroe? That you?" Carl Bowen had aged well, his hair gray now, but his face still lean and alert. He wore the San Mateo County Sheriff's uniform with the easy confidence of a veteran officer. "Carl, this is a coincidence. I was just thinking about you." "Yeah? Heard about this morning? They really found Laura's car?" Carl's expression was sympathetic but guarded. "At Devil's Slide. I was just checking her old patrol route." Carl nodded slowly. Terrible thing. After all this time. He glanced at his watch. "Listen, I'd love to catch up, but I'm running late for my shift." "Actually, I wanted to ask you about the logbook from that night. You signed off on it." Something flickered in Carl's eyes. "That was 13 years ago, Jack. But yeah, I remember signing it. Everything was in order, just like always." He shifted the car into gear. "Tell you what, let's grab coffee sometime soon. Talk about old times. I'm patrolling the San Pedro area today, near the Valley Park. Give me a call at the department." "I'll do that." Carl gave a brief wave and pulled away, his patrol car disappearing around the coastal bend. Back in his car, he turned on the radio as he headed to the station. A news report was playing, a replay of his interview from that morning. Officer Laura Monroe was a dedicated member of this department. She'd just been promoted to patrol sergeant when she disappeared in 1977. She was hard-working, honest, and committed to serving this community. His own words echoed back at him, and suddenly a thought struck cold. Laura had been newly promoted. Young, female, ambitious in a department dominated by old-school cops. He'd worked there long enough to know how brutal the politics could be, how some officers resented change, resented newcomers who rose too fast. He tried to push the thought away. These were his brothers and sisters in blue, people he'd trusted with his life. But the questions persisted. Why had Laura been alone that night? Who had assigned her to such an isolated patrol route? Jack pressed harder on the accelerator. He needed answers, and he was going to find them. The Pacifica police station parking lot was half empty when Jack pulled in, the afternoon shift change still an hour away. He was reaching for his door handle when movement caught his eye. Richard Hensley pacing along the side of the building, cell phone pressed to his ear. Even from 50 feet away, Jack could see the tension in his supervisor's body language. Richard walked back and forth in short, agitated steps, his free hand gesturing sharply. Then his voice rose, carrying across the parking lot. "Car came up. Your job. Move now." Jack paused, hand still on the door handle. Richard's tone was urgent, almost desperate. He climbed out of his patrol car quietly, closing the door with a soft click. Richard must have sensed the movement because he spun around, his eyes widening when he saw Jack. The surprise on his face quickly shifted to something else. Uncertainty? Fear? He immediately lowered his voice, mumbling something into the phone before ending the call. "Jack," Richard called out, forcing a smile. "What are you doing here? Thought I told you to take some time." Jack walked over, trying to keep his expression neutral. Couldn't stay away. Was that about Laura's case? What? Oh, the call. Richard fumbled his phone into his pocket. Yeah, it was. The sheriff's evidence yard. They're giving me grief about moving the car. You know how it is. That vehicle's been in salt water for 13 years. It's an environmental hazard now. EPA regulations and all that. They want it moved to their specialized facility ASAP, but the transport company's dragging their feet. He laughed, but it sounded forced. Had to light a fire under them. Your job, I said. Move it now before we get the county inspectors breathing down our necks. It made sense. Jack had dealt with evidence transport before, knew how complicated it could get with hazardous materials. Bureaucracy never rests, huh? Tell me about it. Richard wiped his forehead despite the cool March air. Come on, let's get inside. They walked through the station's front entrance together, the familiar sounds and smells of the bullpen washing over Jack. Phones ringing, coffee brewing, the subtle undercurrent of controlled chaos that defined police work. He spotted Marie immediately, huddled with 2 forensic technicians near the evidence processing room. She looked up as he approached, but held up a finger. Wait. Degraded samples are always problematic, one of the techs was saying. This new DNA testing requires high-quality genetic material. What we pulled from that car. He shook his head. 13 years underwater, contaminated with salt, rust, marine bacteria. We're looking at weeks minimum, possibly months. There's no way to expedite it? Marie asked. Not without compromising the results. The blood's there, we confirmed that much. But whether we can extract enough clean DNA to make a match. The tech shrugged. Jack felt his hope deflating. Without DNA confirmation, they couldn't even prove Laura had been in the car when it went over. What about the bullet casing? Marie pressed. The second tech flipped through his notes. That's more definitive. It's a .40 caliber, matches the department-issued ammunition from 1977. Same grain weight, same manufacturer. If Officer Monroe fired her weapon that night, this could be from it. Jack closed his eyes, the implications washing over him. Laura's gun, Laura's blood, or someone else's. The uncertainty was maddening. He opened his eyes to see Richard disappearing down the corridor toward his office, his gait slightly unsteady. Marie finally broke away from the forensics team. Sorry about that. You okay? I need to talk to Richard about Carl Bowen. I ran into Carl out on Highway 1, right at Laura's old patrol route. Marie's eyebrows rose. That's quite a coincidence. My thought exactly. Jack touched her shoulder. I'm going to catch Richard. We'll talk after? I'll be in my office. Got something to show you. Jack made his way down the corridor and knocked on Richard's door. It's Jack. Come in. He pushed the door open to find Richard hastily closing his desk drawer, tossing back what looked like pills with a glass of water. Blood pressure medication, Richard explained without being asked. This case is... He gestured vaguely. You shouldn't be here, Jack. I meant what I said about taking time off. I tried, couldn't do it. Jack noticed how Richard slumped in his chair, his face flushed. I need to ask you about Carl Bowen. Richard's expression tightened. What about him? I ran into him today at Laura's old patrol route. He was the night supervisor who signed off on the logbook when Laura disappeared. So? Someone had to sign it. Richard, something's been bothering me. If Laura was attacked that night, she would have called it in. She was too good a cop not to. But there's nothing after 8:15. Richard massaged his temples with both hands. That's exactly why we always thought she'd just left. No distress call, no reports of an attack, no witnesses saying they saw anything suspicious. But that doesn't fit with what we found today. Blood, bullet casing. You're wasting time and resources. Richard's voice turned sharp. Carl Bowen is a good cop. You want to start suspecting your brothers in blue based on, what, a signature on a 13-year-old logbook? I'm not suspecting anyone. I just want a complete picture. Richard stood abruptly, then grabbed the edge of his desk as he swayed. I can't. I need to check on the car transport, make sure it gets to the evidence yard properly. He headed for the door, but stumbled slightly. Jack caught his arm, alarmed by how clammy Richard's skin felt through his shirt sleeve. Jesus, Richard, you sure you're okay? Maybe you need some coffee or... I'm fine. Richard pulled away, attempting a laugh. Just this damn diet my wife's got me on. Low blood sugar and stress don't mix. He straightened his tie with shaking hands. We need concrete leads, Jack, not wild theories about fellow officers. Jack watched him leave, noticing how Richard forgot to lock his office door and nearly walked into the glass entrance to the bullpen. Something was definitely wrong, but before he could pursue it, Marie appeared at his elbow. My office? Now. Once inside, Marie closed the door and pulled a document from her desk. I was going through the archives, looking at other cases Laura was working in '77. Found this misfiled. Jack took the paper, a witness statement, but something was off. No signature, no official stamp, just typed text describing a patrol car and a white van on Devil's Slide Road the night Laura disappeared. Where was this? In a completely unrelated case file, residential burglary from 3 months later. Marie pulled out the actual burglary file. See? Nothing to do with Laura, or that night. Jack studied both documents. Why hide it instead of destroying it? Marie lowered her voice. Maybe someone wanted insurance, a backup story in case they needed it, or maybe they just forgot they'd stashed it. Either way, someone in this department knew more than they said. Jack looked at the name on the witness statement. Belinda Carlson. Wait, that name. I already pulled the official file. Marie produced another folder. There's a second statement from Belinda Carlson, signed, stamped, completely official. Jack read it quickly. In this version, Belinda claimed she'd seen nothing unusual that night. The same witness, 2 completely different stories. She's got an address and phone number listed. Jack checked his watch. Still local, over in the Fairmont neighborhood. Marie grabbed her jacket. I'm coming with you. Something tells me Ms. Carlson has some explaining to do. They headed for the door, Jack's mind racing. New evidence, hidden documents, and conflicting statements after 13 years, the carefully constructed wall of silence around Laura's disappearance was finally beginning to crack. Marie's unmarked Crown Victoria smelled like coffee and old case files as they pulled out of the station parking lot. Jack had the witness statement in his hand, dialing the phone number listed for Belinda Carlson. Come on, pick up, he muttered, listening to the endless ringing. After the 4th attempt, he snapped the phone shut. Line's dead. Either disconnected or she's not answering. The address is only 5 minutes away, Marie said, turning onto Monterey Road. Fairmont's a quiet neighborhood, working class. The houses grew smaller as they drove, neat post-war bungalows with tiny yards and American cars in the driveways. Marie slowed as they turned onto Belinda's street, checking house numbers. "Should be on the right," Jack said. 2847, 2851. There. Wait. Marie hit the brakes gently. Look. Richard Hensley's department-issued sedan sat in front of a yellow house with peeling paint and an overgrown lawn. Richard himself stood on the front porch, and he wasn't alone. A woman in her early 40s faced him, her body language defensive, arms crossed over her chest. Marie pulled to the curb 3 houses down, killing the engine. Through the windshield, they watched Richard jab his finger at the woman, his face stern. Even from this distance, they could see the tension in his shoulders, the aggressive lean of his body. "What the hell is he doing here?" Jack whispered. The woman, presumably Belinda, shook her head repeatedly, backing toward her door. Richard reached into his jacket and pulled out what looked like a thick envelope. He pressed it into her hands, leaning close to say something that made her flinch. "That doesn't look like an official interview," Marie observed. Richard turned abruptly and strode back to his car. They ducked down instinctively as he drove past, though his attention seemed focused straight ahead. Once his taillights disappeared around the corner, they watched Belinda retreat into her house, clutching the envelope. "Well," Marie said, "this just got interesting." They approached the house carefully, noting the mechanic's tools scattered on the porch, the oil stains on the driveway. Jack knocked firmly. The door opened immediately, Belinda's face already twisted in annoyance. "What else do you people want?" She stopped short, seeing 2 unfamiliar faces. Jack noticed her eyes were red-rimmed, her hands shaking slightly. "Ms. Carlson, I'm Sergeant Jack Monroe. This is Detective Marie Estrada. We're with Pacifica PD." Belinda's expression shifted from anger to confusion to something like fear. What's this about?" "We'd like to ask you some questions about a statement you gave in 1977, Jack said. "May we come in?" "I don't have any business with you." She started to close the door. Marie stepped forward. "We saw you talking with our supervisor just now, Richard Hensley. We're investigating the same case, and we really need to speak with you." Belinda's face went pale. She glanced between them, then down at the documents in Jack's hand. "I don't understand what you mean." Jack held up both witness statements, the hidden one and the official one. "We need you to explain these." For a long moment, Belinda stared at the papers. Then her shoulders sagged in defeat. She rolled her eyes and stepped back. "Fine, come in, but this is the last time I'm talking about this." The living room was small but tidy, decorated with photographs of better times. Belinda gestured to a worn couch and took the recliner across from them, the envelope from Richard still clutched in her lap. "I don't know what you want me to say," she began. "The truth would be nice," Marie said gently. "We know you gave 2 different statements about the night Officer Laura Monroe disappeared. We need to know what you really saw." Belinda laughed bitterly. "The truth? You want the truth after 13 years? She rubbed her face with both hands. "I'm so tired of carrying this burden, these lies, this guilt." Jack leaned forward. "Then tell us. Help us understand." Belinda stared at the envelope in her lap for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I was driving to work that night, November 18th, 1977. I was a park ranger at San Pedro Valley Park, working the evening shift. It was about 8:30 when I passed Devil's Slide Road and saw a female officer, alone, pulling over a white van." She paused, lost in the memory. "I didn't think much of it. Cops pull people over all the time, right? So I kept driving." "Can you describe the van?" Marie asked, taking notes. "White, like I said. Older model, maybe early 70s, no windows in the back, the kind contractors use." Belinda shifted in her chair. "Anyway, I got to work, did my rounds, but it was a slow night, and I was bored. So around 10 p.m., I called my husband, asked him to come keep me company." She had the grace to look embarrassed. We met up in the park. You know how it is. Young, married, looking for some excitement. The park's huge, lots of isolated spots in the woods. We found a quiet place and—" She waved her hand. "You get the idea." "What happened then?" Jack pressed. "We heard something, a noise, like a shout, maybe a scream. Hard to tell with the wind and the trees. My husband wanted to investigate, but the park is massive. In the dark, sounds echo weird. We walked around for maybe 15 minutes, but couldn't find anything." "What time was this?" "Maybe 11:30? Midnight? I wasn't exactly checking my watch." Belinda's voice turned bitter. "When I headed back to my post around 12:30, I saw that same white van driving out of the park. Same one from the traffic stop. I was sure of it." Marie and Jack exchanged glances. "You're certain it was the same van?" "Positive. It had a dent in the rear panel, right side, shaped like a crescent moon." "And you reported this?" Belinda's face crumpled. "I tried. The next day, when I heard about the missing officer last seen in Highway 1, I went to the police station, gave my statement. But your supervisor, Hensley, he took over." She grabbed the envelope and thrust it at them. "Take it. I'm done with this. All of it." Jack opened the envelope. Inside was $3,000 in worn bills. "He paid you to change your statement," Jack said. It wasn't a question. Belinda nodded miserably. "Said my first statement about the white van was unclear, confusing. Said I needed to simplify it, just say I didn't see anything. Made it sound like he was doing me a favor, helping me avoid complications." "But that wasn't all, was it?" Marie's voice was gentle, but firm. "No?" Tears rolled down Belinda's face. "A week later, my supervisor at the park found out about me and my husband meeting there. Someone made an anonymous complaint. I was fired for inappropriate conduct. Couldn't get another ranger job anywhere. Hensley made sure of that." "So you kept quiet," Jack said. "What choice did I have? My father was sick. The medical bills." She gestured around the modest room. "I took over my dad's mechanic shop, barely scraped by, and every few months Hensley would show up with another envelope. 'For your troubles,' he'd say. 'For your continued discretion.'" Marie stood. "Ms. Carlson, we need you to come to the station, make an official statement, help us build a case against Richard." Belinda shook her head violently. No way. You saw him here today. He knows something's happening. I may sound selfish, but I need to protect myself and my family. My father's still sick, still needs care, and my husband had moved to a different state, blaming me for the money. Hensley could destroy what little we have left." "But your testimony—" "Won't be enough?" Belinda's voice was firm. "You know it won't. He's a respected supervisor, 20-plus years on the force. I'm nobody, a disgraced park ranger who got caught screwing her husband on the job. Who's going to believe me?" Jack wanted to argue, but he understood her fear. He'd seen how the system could crush those without power or connections. "Find more evidence," Belinda said. "Build a case he can't wiggle out of. Then I'll testify. But not before." Back in the car, Jack slumped in his seat. "She's right. Her word against Richards won't be enough." "But now we know there's something to find," Marie said, starting the engine. "A white van in the park that night, Richard covering it up. This is bigger than just Laura." Jack suddenly straightened. "Carl Bowen said he was patrolling San Pedro Valley area today. Same park where Belinda worked. That can't be a coincidence." Marie's eyes gleamed with determination. "Then let's go see what Officer Bowen is really up to." San Pedro Valley Park stretched before them, a vast expanse of coastal hills and redwood groves that climbed from the Pacific toward the Santa Cruz Mountains. Marie turned into the main parking area, the afternoon sun filtering through the eucalyptus trees that lined the entrance. "There," Jack said sharply. "Richard's car." The supervisor's sedan sat near the ranger station, and beside it, the black and white patrol car Jack had seen that morning. He checked the plate number to be sure. "That's Carl Bowen's unit, same one from this morning." Marie scanned the lot. "We need cover. Don't want them spotting us." She maneuvered the Crown Victoria into a spot between a van and a pickup truck, partially hidden by overhanging branches. From here, they had a clear view of both vehicles while remaining concealed. Jack grabbed a park map from the visitor box as they exited the car. The trail system sprawled across thousands of acres. Hazelnut Trail, Weiler Ranch Road, Middle Peak. Finding anything in this wilderness would be like searching for a specific grain of sand on a beach. "We can't just wander around hoping to," Jack began, but Marie pressed a finger to her lips. She pointed through the trees. Two figures emerged from a trailhead 50 yards away. Richard Hensley, still in his suit despite the outdoor setting, and Carl Bowen in his San Mateo County uniform. Carl carried a shovel and a heavy gear bag. Richard clutched a large black plastic bag, the industrial kind used for construction waste. They moved with purpose toward their vehicles. Richard's face was flushed with exertion and annoyance, though he kept his voice low. Jack and Marie crept closer, using the tree line for cover. "Told you this was unnecessary," Carl was saying. Richard popped his trunk and carefully placed the plastic bag inside a wooden crate. "Unnecessary? Did you hear Monroe on the news this morning? They found the car, Carl. The goddamn car came up." Carl loaded his shovel and gear bag into his patrol vehicle. "So what? It's been 13 years. There's nothing. There's blood?" Richard's voice was tight with controlled panic. "Bullet casings, and this new DNA testing they've got now. You have any idea how accurate it is?" "The body's been in the ground for 13 years, Richard. It's probably just bones by now. No one's going to find it at Middle Peak. It's a hiking-only trail, 2 miles into the wilderness. Who's going to look there?" Richard moved the crate from his trunk to Carl's, grunting with the effort. Jack noticed how he handled it carefully, despite his agitation. "Are you stupid?" Richard cuffed the back of Carl's head. "If they confirm that blood in the car is Laura's, what do you think happens next? They'll want the body. They'll start questioning everyone again. That Carlson woman, the park rangers we've been paying to keep quiet. One of them talks, and we're finished." Carl rubbed his head, scowling. "Fine, but where am I supposed to take it? Can't exactly drive around with human remains in my trunk. Somewhere secure, somewhere I don't even know about, so if things go south, I can pass a polygraph." Carl thought for a moment. "What about the place near those people? You know, our business partners. If anyone ever gets close, suspicion falls on them, not us." For the first time, Richard almost smiled. "Finally, you're thinking. Just get it done. And Carl, make sure no one sees you." They slammed their trunks closed. Richard climbed into his sedan while Carl settled into his patrol car. Jack and Marie retreated deeper into the trees as both vehicles started up. Richard's car turned left at the park exit, heading back toward town. Carl's patrol car went right, heading north along the coastal route. They jogged back to their car, Marie sliding behind the wheel before Jack had fully closed his door. She waited until Carl had a 30-second lead before pulling out. "Thank God we didn't have to hike Middle Peak," Marie muttered, keeping Carl's patrol car in sight while maintaining distance. 2 miles into wilderness terrain? We'd have been searching for hours. "That has to be Laura in that bag," Jack said, his voice thick with emotion. 13 years she's been up there. Alone? "We don't know that for certain," Marie cautioned, though her tone suggested she believed it too. "But whatever's in that crate, Richard and Carl are desperate to hide it." They followed Carl north along Highway 1, past Devil's Slide, where this had all begun just hours ago. Jack watched the patrol car ahead, his mind racing. "Those people," Carl had said. "Business partners. What kind of business did a corrupt cop have with partners worth protecting?" At the intersection with Highway 92, Richard's prediction proved correct. His sedan turned inland, heading back to Pacifica. Carl continued north. "He's really going to do it?" Marie said. "Move a body in broad daylight in a police vehicle." 13 years they've gotten away with this, Jack replied. "This is a quiet old town. Why would they think today would be any different?" After 30 minutes of tailing Carl's patrol car north along the coast, Marie observed, "We're heading into Sharp Park territory." Jack leaned forward, spotting the familiar industrial complex in the distance. "There, the water treatment facility. He's turning in." The Sharp Park Water Treatment Plant was a sprawling complex of concrete buildings and cylindrical tanks, surrounded by chain-link fence and warning signs. Carl's patrol car didn't head for the main entrance, but circled around to a service road at the back of the facility. Marie pulled off the main road, finding cover behind a cluster of storage units that gave them a view of Carl's movements. Through the fence, they watched him park in a secluded spot near a heavily vegetated area, untended grassland that bordered the facility's rear perimeter. "He's moving," Jack said. Carl emerged from his vehicle and popped the trunk. He hefted the wooden crate containing the plastic bag, grabbed his shovel, and headed into the tall grass. He moved with purpose, but kept checking over his shoulder. "Let's go," Marie whispered. "Stay low." They slipped from their car and approached the fence line, using the industrial equipment and overgrown bushes for cover. Carl hadn't ventured far into the vegetation, maybe 30 yards from his vehicle. They could see him clearly as he began to dig. The shovel bit into the earth with rhythmic chunks. Carl worked efficiently, years of physical labor evident in his movements. Within 10 minutes, he'd excavated a hole roughly 3 feet deep and 4 feet long. Jack's stomach clenched as Carl opened the crate and upended the black plastic bag into the hole. The contents spilled out, clearly human remains, though degraded by years of burial. Bones, tattered fabric, and what might have been hair tumbled into the fresh grave. Then Carl did something that made Jack's blood boil. He reached into the hole and plucked something out, a small bone, maybe a finger, and slipped it into his pocket. A trophy. Carl began filling in the hole, tamping down the earth with his boots. Within minutes, he dispersed the extra soil and covered the site with grass and debris. To a casual observer, the ground appeared undisturbed. They retreated to their car as Carl loaded his equipment back into the trunk. Jack reached for the radio, but Marie caught his hand. "Wait," she said. "Remember what he told Richard? Something about putting it near those people so suspicion would fall on them. Let's see where he goes." Jack nodded reluctantly. They needed the whole picture, not just Carl with a shovel. Carl brushed dirt from his uniform and climbed back into his patrol car. But instead of leaving the facility, he drove through an internal access gate, showing his credentials to the bored-looking security guard. "He's got access," Marie muttered. "How long has this been going on?" They watched through binoculars as Carl's vehicle stopped outside what appeared to be an abandoned generator shed at the far end of the complex. The building looked like it hadn't seen maintenance in years, rust-stained walls, broken windows patched with plywood. Carl disappeared inside. 5 minutes passed. Then he emerged, carrying a rectangular package wrapped in brown paper, the size and shape immediately familiar to any narcotics officer. "Son of a bitch," Jack breathed. "Drugs? He's picking up drugs." Marie was already on the radio, keeping her voice low. "Dispatch, this is Detective Estrada. Need you to run a quiet check on the Sharp Park Water Treatment Facility. Any reports, complaints, unusual activity?" While they waited for dispatch to respond, movement at the generator shed caught their attention. 2 men had emerged, and between them were 2 young women, teenagers by the look of them, wearing cheap dresses and looking terrified. The men pushed the girls toward Carl, who grabbed them roughly by the arms and marched them to his patrol car, shoving them into the back seat. "That's it," Jack said. "We need backup now." Marie was already on the radio. "Dispatch, we have a 1099 at Sharp Park Water Treatment Facility. Officer involved in possible human trafficking and narcotics. Request immediate tactical team response. Suspect is Deputy Carl Bowen, San Mateo County. We also need units to secure Supervisor Richard Hensley at Pacifica Station. He's involved." "Copy that, Detective." Units responding ETA 5 minutes. They maintained visual on Carl, who was now engaged in animated conversation with the men outside the shed. The casual nature of the interaction suggested this wasn't their first transaction. Then a white van appeared from deeper within the facility. Old, nondescript, with no rear windows. Jack's pulse quickened, just like the one Belinda Carlson had described. Carl returned to his patrol car and positioned it in front of the van, clearly preparing to escort it out of the facility. Using a police vehicle to protect a criminal operation, the audacity of it made Jack's hands clench into fists. "They've been doing this for years," Marie said quietly. "Look how routine it all is. No nervousness, no rush. Just business as usual." The sound of approaching sirens shattered the afternoon quiet. Multiple patrol cars and a SWAT van converged on the facility's main gate. The security guard, faced with overwhelming police presence, had no choice but to open the barrier. Carl and the van driver realized their predicament simultaneously. Both vehicles lurched forward, trying to reach a secondary exit. Marie threw their car into gear, joining the pursuit with the other units. The van driver lost his nerve first, slamming on the brakes and throwing his hands up. Carl tried to bluff his way through, stopping his patrol car and climbing out with affected nonchalance. "What's going on here?" he called out, trying for authoritative confusion. "I didn't receive any notification about an operation. I was just checking this warehouse as part of my patrol." Marie was already out of the car, handcuffs in hand. "Save it, Carl. We saw everything." "This is a misunderstanding," Carl protested as Marie cuffed him. "Those girls in my car, they were buying drugs. See?" He gestured desperately at the brown package on his front seat. "I was bringing them in." Jack leaned in close. "You're quite the storyteller, Carl. Too bad we watched you bury human remains 30 minutes ago. Probably Laura's. Then waltz in here for your drug pickup and probably your monthly bonus of trafficked girls." Carl's face went white. "I don't know what you're talking about. This is all a mistake." "Only mistake was yours," Marie said, reading him his rights while guiding him to a patrol car. Meanwhile, the tactical team had breached the generator shed. Jack and Marie approached as officers emerged with handcuffed suspects, hard-looking men who radiated violence even in custody. Inside, the shed revealed its true purpose immediately. Stairs led down to a basement level that reeked of chemicals. The meth lab was extensive: glass apparatus, heating elements, tanks of precursor chemicals. Professional grade, capable of producing massive quantities. In a side room, they found more victims. Women ranging from teenagers to their 30s, all showing signs of captivity and abuse. A female officer was speaking softly to them in Spanish, assuring them of their safety. One of the older women, braver than the rest, spoke up. "We work the lab, packaging, cleaning, but the young ones," she gestured at the teenagers. "They keep them for special, for new customers, new partners, monthly reward for police who help them." Jack had to step outside, fighting nausea. This went beyond corruption. This was evil, systematic, and protected by the very people sworn to serve. Medical teams arrived, gently escorting the victims to ambulances. The arrest transport began filling with suspects. Evidence teams swarmed the lab, documenting everything. "We need to recover those remains," Jack told Marie, "before anyone else gets involved." They found another officer to accompany them and drove back to where Carl had dug his hasty grave. The disturbed earth was still obvious to trained eyes. Using Carl's abandoned shovel, they carefully excavated the remains, transferring them to an evidence bag with the reverence they deserved. "Laura?" Jack whispered. After 13 years, they'd found her. Back at their car, with the evidence secured, Jack remembered one more crucial piece. "We need Belinda Carlson. Her testimony ties this all together." Marie was already dialing. When Belinda answered, Marie's voice was firm but kind. "Miss Carlson, it's Detective Estrada. We've arrested Carl Bowen and have evidence on Richard Hensley. Multiple officers involved. It's time to fulfill your promise." There was a long pause, then, "Thank God. Yes, I'll come." "We're sending a unit to escort you safely to the station," Marie assured her. Jack grabbed the radio. "Dispatch, need a unit to 2855 Fairmont Avenue, Pacifica. Protective escort for a witness." The water treatment facility looked like a war zone now. Police vehicles everywhere, suspects in custody, victims receiving care. They'd uncovered something monstrous hiding in plain sight, protected by badges and the public trust. "Let's get back," Marie said. "Time to have a real conversation with Richard Hensley." The Pacifica police station had transformed into controlled chaos. Suspects from the water treatment facility filed through booking, their wrists cuffed, their faces sullen. Officers moved with practiced efficiency, processing evidence, filing reports, coordinating with multiple agencies. The magnitude of what they'd uncovered was still sinking in. Jack and Marie submitted their evidence to the property clerk, the bag of remains, Carl's shovel, photographs from both scenes. Each item was logged meticulously, the chain of custody preserved. "Interrogation room 2, a uniformed officer told them. "Hensley's already there. Captain wants you both on this." Through the one-way mirror, Richard Hensley looked smaller than Jack had ever seen him. The confident supervisor was gone, replaced by a sweating, handcuffed man whose eyes darted nervously around the room. Marie took the lead, settling into the chair across from Richard, while Jack sat quietly beside her, studying the man he'd trusted for 2 decades. "This interview is being recorded," Marie began, activating the tape. "Present are Detective Marie Estrada, Sergeant Jack Monroe, and Supervisor Richard Hensley. Mr. Hensley, you've been read your rights?" "This is a mistake," Richard said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Whatever you think you saw—" "What we saw," Marie interrupted calmly, "was you delivering a payoff to Belinda Carlson this afternoon. We saw you and Carl Bowen moving human remains from San Pedro Valley Park. We followed Carl to a meth lab where he collected drugs and trafficked women. Ms. Carlson has given a full statement about how you paid her to change her testimony 13 years ago." Richard's face went through several shades of pale. "You followed us?" "From the park to the treatment facility," Jack confirmed. "We saw everything, Richard." The silence stretched between them. Richard's breathing grew labored, his shirt darkening with sweat. "What happened in 1977? Jack asked quietly. "What happened to my wife?" Richard stared at the table for a long moment. When he finally looked up, something had broken in his eyes. "Fine," he said. "You know everything anyway. I'm tired of this. 13 years of looking over my shoulder, waiting for this day." He took a shuddering breath. "My best chance now is a plea deal, so here it is. All of it." Marie leaned forward, pen poised over her notepad. "Laura pulled over a van that night, November 18th, 1977. Routine traffic stop near the old industrial docks at Moss Landing, just outside Pacifica. She didn't know it, but that van was carrying a meth shipment from the water treatment facility to the docks for distribution." Jack's hands clenched under the table, but he remained silent. The driver panicked. Low-level runner, probably high on his own product. He shot her through the passenger window, hit her in the shoulder, spun her around. She was wounded, bleeding, but not dead. "And they called you," Marie said. It wasn't a question. Richard nodded miserably. "I was their inside man, had been for 2 years already. They paid well, and I told myself I was just looking the other way, not really involved. But when they called that night—" He rubbed his face. "I sent Carl, told him to handle it before backup could respond to her last position." "Carl killed her," Jack said, his voice rough. "No?" Richard met his eyes. "I did. Carl wanted to call an ambulance, try to save her, but she'd seen the van, seen the driver. She could identify them, testify, so His voice cracked. I finished what the runner started, used her own weapon. That's why the casing matched department ammunition. The interrogation room fell silent, except for the hum of the recording equipment. We destroyed her radio and dash cam, Richard continued, each word seeming to age him. Buried her body in San Pedro Valley Park, Middle Peak Trail, 2 miles in where no one goes. The cartel guys took her patrol car to Devil's Slide, pushed it off into the ocean. Storm that week helped hide it. The blood in the trunk? Marie asked. From moving her, we wrapped her in plastic, but he shrugged helplessly. Jack found his voice. All these years, the monthly payments weren't just money. No, Richard admitted. Drugs for some of the guys who were using. Girls for entertainment. The operation grew over the years. More cops got involved. Names, Marie demanded. Richard laughed bitterly. You want names? This station would run out of staff if I gave you all of them. As the names poured out, Jack felt sick. The corruption ran deeper than he'd imagined. No wonder Laura's disappearance had never been solved. Half the department had been actively covering it up. I need some air, Jack said abruptly, standing. Marie glanced at him with concern but nodded. Take your time. We're not done here. Jack stumbled into the corridor, his legs unsteady. The weight of 13 years of lies, of sleeping next to an empty pillow, not knowing if Laura had left him or died, crashed down at once. Jack? He looked up to see Belinda Carlson sitting on a bench near the interview rooms, her hands folded nervously in her lap. Ms. Carlson, he moved to sit beside her. Thank you for coming. I gave my statement, she said quietly. Told them everything. About that night, about Richard's threats and bribes. All of it. She turned to him with tears in her eyes. I'm so sorry. It's not fair what happened to you, to Laura, to anyone. I know I deserve to be prosecuted. I took their money, kept their secrets. Jack studied her weathered face, seeing the weight she'd carried. You were intimidated into silence. You were threatened. The prosecutor will take that into consideration. But I still. You came forward when it mattered, Jack interrupted gently. Your testimony helped us solve this. That counts for something. Maybe immunity, maybe a plea deal. But either way. He met her eyes. I'm grateful. Laura can finally rest because you found your courage. They embraced briefly, two people bound by tragedy, finding a moment of solace. Sergeant Monroe? A forensic technician appeared in the doorway. Could you come with me? We need you to identify something. Jack excused himself and followed the tech to the evidence room. Tables lined the walls, covered with tagged items from the day's raids. The tech led him to a smaller table where the remains had been carefully arranged. We'll send everything for DNA testing to the state lab, the tech explained, pulling on latex gloves. But we found this with the remains. He held up a small evidence bag. Inside was a pendant on a delicate chain, tarnished but intact. Jack recognized it immediately, the platinum heart Laura had worn every day of their marriage. With trembling hands, Jack took the bag. Through the plastic, he could feel the weight of the metal, the familiar shape. He turned it over, and there it was, engraved on the back in elegant script. Jack and Laura, forever. The tears came then, 13 years of grief pouring out in the sterile evidence room. The pendant made it real in a way even finding her body hadn't. This was Laura's, worn against her skin, cherished. She hadn't left him. She'd been stolen from him. The tech stepped back respectfully, giving him space to mourn. After several minutes, Jack wiped his eyes and returned to the evidence table. Among the bones, he noticed one was tagged separately. We found that in Carl Bowen's pocket, the tech explained. A finger bone. He took it as some kind of trophy. Sick bastards, Jack muttered. These men had worn badges, taken oaths. They'd betrayed everything law enforcement stood for. He touched the bag containing the bones gently. "Finally found you, Laura. You can rest now." "Sergeant," the tech said softly, "what you did today, you saved those women at the facility. They're at Pacifica General now, getting treatment. Their lives matter, too." Jack nodded, drawing strength from that truth. Laura was gone, but others had been saved. He confirmed the evidence for DNA testing and walked back to the corridor. Marie was just emerging from the interrogation room, looking drained but satisfied. "He gave us everything," she said. "Names, dates, routes, contacts. This is going to tear the department apart." "Good," Jack said firmly. "It needs to be torn apart, rebuilt clean." They stood together in the corridor, watching as more suspects were processed, as internal affairs officers arrived to begin their investigation, as the machinery of justice ground forward. "This is going to be a long battle," Marie observed. "Trials, investigations, rooting out every corrupt cop Richard named. The department won't be the same." "It shouldn't be the same," Jack replied. "Not after this." Marie checked her watch. "The victims from the facility, we should go see them too. Take their statements, but also—" She paused. "Let them know they're safe now, that people care." Jack nodded. "Let's go." As they headed for the booking office, Jack reflected on what they'd uncovered. Evil had flourished in their midst because good people had stayed silent, because those entrusted with power had abused it for personal gain. Laura had died simply for doing her job, for pulling over the wrong vehicle at the wrong time. But truth, like her patrol car, had a way of surfacing eventually. The storm that had dislodged the evidence was more than meteorological. It was the storm of conscience in people like Belinda, the storm of determination in officers like Marie, the storm of justice that demanded accounting for sins long hidden. The badge meant something. It had to mean something. And for Laura, for the women they'd saved today, for the community that trusted them, they would make sure it did again.